The Torah portion this week is called Beshalach, when he sent. Let's have a look. We're going to be talking about the biggest miracle in the Bible, or one of them, the one that everybody knows about, which is the parting of the Red Sea. Just want to bring to your attention, there's a film coming out, or has come out, in America called Patterns of Evidence. It's all about the Exodus story. It's all about all the stuff that they've documented that proves the factual accounts of the Bible. And this was one of the advertising pieces. It says, if Joseph was never in Egypt and the Bible got it wrong, why is there a canal next to the Nile with the name Bar Yosef, which means the waterway of Joseph? So look out for it. I think we're going to try and get a copy of that now. So the name Beshalach comes from the second word of the Hebrew text, and the root of this word is the primitive verb shalach. It means to cast out, to send out, to expel or put away. So the Pharaoh kicked out the Hebrews just as his ancestor before him had cast out Abraham and Sarah. I just want us to read the account that comes before that in the Torah of when Abraham and Sarah were cast out. Genesis 12:14-20, it says, it came to pass that when Abraham was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld a woman, that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Remember, the woman is the mother of Israel. She kind of represents Israel, doesn't she? And he entreated Abraham well for her sake. And he had sheep, oxen, he-asses, men servants, maid servants, she-asses and camels. So Abraham does really well out of this. It says, and Jehovah plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. And Pharaoh called Abraham and said, what is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why sayest thou, she is my sister, so I might have taken her to be my wife? Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go away. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. So this Pharaoh expelled Abraham and Sarah. So we've had Sarah, the mother of Israel, taken captive in Egypt in this story. We've had plagues being sent on the Egyptians and ascending away with the riches of the land. Now this account was in the Torah before the one we've been reading about. So it's a forerunner of what we've just been reading in the last few weeks. Now, bear that in mind, that this story of Abraham and Sarah was a little of what was to come, which we've just all been reading about, the plagues and everything else, and Israel being captive. Well, just see it like this. What we've been reading about with Moshe and the Hebrews, that itself is just a forerunner of what is to come. So, just as Abraham and Sarah paved the way for what was going to happen to the nation of Israel, what we've been reading about is just paving the way for what's actually going to happen in the end of days. And we have to really understand it. I want us to read this knowing that. So in Revelation, a lot of things are actually mapped out, they're paralleling, and I just wanted to have a quick look at some scriptures. I looked and behold a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and with the beasts of the earth. This is the time that's to come, but all this has been marked out for us in what we've been reading. We have to recognise the prophetic significance. Revelation 8:8, and the second angel sounded, as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. The Nile became blood, didn't it? Revelation 8:12, the fourth angel sounded, the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, the third part of the day, third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Revelation 16:10 says, and the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain. When we're reading these things, sometimes it's easy to just read them and think, oh yeah. But what we've got to recognise is the fact that this is all real. Just as Abraham and Sarah's little story became a massive event in Exodus, the book that we're reading, that will become a massive event, and it's foretold in the scriptures that we find in Revelation. Now, the people of Egypt they wouldn't repent, would they? The Pharaoh was like that, no. But neither will the people again when Jehovah sends his judgment once again. It tells us in Revelation 16, 9 and 11. In verse 9 it says, and men were scorched with great heat and blasphemed the name of God, which had power over these plagues, and they repented not to give him glory. Verse 11, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. It's hard to imagine that, isn't it? This is what's foretold in the scriptures. Just as it's hard to imagine how the Pharaoh could have been saying, no, I'm not going to let you go, despite all the crazy stuff that was going on. Well, the people in the future are going to be exactly the same. And we think we're at home and we're safe in places like England in our current age. We do, don't we? And there's a lovely village there, there's a little cafe there and everything. Looks like a nice place. But we have to learn from history, because sometime from somewhere there will arise a pharaoh or king or Führer or prime minister or president or pope, and the decree the new leader issues will not be any more passive than was Pharaoh's, and we'll have to run once again for our lives. Just as the Pharaoh said, get out. And it wasn't passive, it was an expulsion. The same is going to happen again. Yeshua warns us, Matthew 24, 20 to 22, pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. The worst time ever known in the history of mankind is coming, that's what he's saying, and it actually says that except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sake, those days should be shortened. Now I've put some pictures up there of British policemen, because I want us to recognise that this isn't something that's just going to happen somewhere remote. So it's not something that's happened in history and won't happen again. This is something that's talking specifically to us and where we live. We're to be prepared and to be ready. Yeshua says, except those days be short, there should be no flesh saved. You don't then say, except for in England where it'll all be fine and it'll be wonderful. So it's a word to us as well. So we should be aware of the times we're living in. We trust Jehovah to prepare us, to guide us, but we must be sober and alert. Jehovah is calling all of his people to return to the Torah in order that we'll be ready for the coming of Messiah. And there's a lovely expression which says, observe the mitzvot behidor. That means to follow his commandments with beauty, which means going beyond the minimum requirements. Just as a bride to be does everything that she can to prepare herself for life with her bridegroom. So what's your attitude? Is your attitude, yeah, well, you don't really have to, is it? Or is your attitude, I don't care, I'm going full out, I'm going right out my way to get myself prepared? You have to check these things, don't you? Now there's a promise to the church in Philadelphia. It says, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, the hour of trial, which shall come upon the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. Okay, because thou hast kept the word of my patience. There's a good thing to note there, isn't it? Probably best to keep the word of his patience. Keep the word. That's the only way that you will escape from the hour of temptation that's coming upon the whole earth. Luke 21, 34 to 36 says, and take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life. You should just stop there and go, don't let any of that stuff overtake you, because it can't it while you're not looking. Before you know it, you're all embroiled in that, and suddenly such and such is so important. Hang on, put it all in perspective, so that that day doesn't come upon you unawares and you're surprised and shocked. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. That means everywhere. So it's talking to us. Watch ye therefore and pray always that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. Now, I don't do it always, but I do it often. I actually pray that. And I think, because Yeshua says to do it, it's probably a good idea. And I would recommend to everybody to pray that same thing, that you might be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass and to stand before the Son of Man. So let's begin the portion, but let's read it knowing that everything we read about is prophetic and speaks to us in this age, which is the last days, which we recognise them. Okay, I'm just going to sit. you begin in Exodus 13, verse 17, there's a map there. The reason I put the map up is just to give you an idea of the area we're dealing with. Now it says, and it came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, expelled them basically, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. And if you see, if they'd have gone up the way of the land of the Philistines, the route was so much shorter. It was ridiculous. But he didn't go that way. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war and they return to Egypt. He knows his people well, and that includes us. And he only throws at us what we're able to bear. He won't put things in our way that are he knows are going to send us off track. He won't do that, just as he doesn't do it to these people here. Now the coastal highway was guarded by Egyptian garrisons, and God didn't want the military confrontations to dissuade the people. Besides, he had some important things to teach them in the wilderness before they arrived at Canaan. Now, the thing to learn is we're often in a hurry to reach our dreams and goals. We are, aren't we? We're living in an MTV generation. Although when I mention MTV, JP laughs because no, we're beyond that now. It makes me look old when I say that. It is frustrating to take long cuts through the wilderness, but God's more interested in seeing us develop in spiritual maturity than he is in seeing us arrive at our dreams and goals. He wants to build our character. As you read this parsha with me, everything that's happening, sometimes you think, why did he let that happen? Why does he do this? Why did this happen? It's all to build the people's character. He does things in our lives, and they're all designed to build our character. Even though we might be sitting there going, what's going on? He knows what he's doing, doesn't he? Right, and you think, but they really returned to Egypt. But the real issue with which we, the people of Israel, need to deal with is the affection that we still have or had in our hearts for Egypt. How we love leeks and onions and secular culture and entertainment. And it's true, isn't it? There are certain things that will try and pull us back to the world. The Lord wants to deal with that because it's not a good place for us to be. We did not really believe, this is the people of Israel, that Jehovah had in store for us, what he had in store for us was better than what we've been able to attain for ourselves by working for Pharaoh. Because after all, we've got no frame of reference other than life in Pharaoh's world. This is a people who've had everything pulled from beneath their feet. Absolutely everything. And they finding it difficult to grasp hold of absolutely anything. And I like this Francis Chan quote. He says, our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding with things in life that don't really matter. Okay, so you can imagine these people walking out thinking, you know what, if I was back in Egypt I could have probably made a go of it. What am I going to do here? This is complete nonsense. And sometimes we're like that, aren't we? When the Lord calls us out of the world, what am I not supposed to do? I don't know. I could have been doing it. I could have been doing it. So-and-so's phoned up and having to do it. I can't. And it confuses us and it worries us. But we always have to trust that the Lord knows what he's doing. He has a plan to break off of us every bit of residue of enslavement. Okay? Which involves the mentality of helplessness, hopelessness, worry and obsession over material things. And his plan is designed so that we can actually begin to be who he created and redeemed us to be. And Yeshua said this, he said in John 8:36, he says, if the Son therefore shall make you free, you shall be free indeed. He doesn't want to just take them out of Egypt, does he? But leave them all hankering after the things in Egypt. He's got work to do with these people. I've just put this thing up here that says, work harder, earn more money, buy more things, keep going. And the sign says, happiness is just around the corner. And this is the life that most people lead, isn't it? And they're so busy following that they miss what the Lord wants to do in their greater destiny. Verse 18 says, but God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. And Moshe took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had straitly sworn the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones away hence with you. And they took their journey from Succoth and encamped in Etham in the edge of the wilderness. Now this map probably gives you a bit of an idea of the journey they took and the journey they could have took. The green lines of the journey they actually took. And if they'd have just followed the Mediterranean Sea, they would have just, they'd have been there in 11 days and they'd have been on the coast, everything would have been great. Now the word for harnessed is related to the Hebrew word shemesh or 5. Some translations say they went out of Egypt armed, some say they went out high-handed. I find it hard to imagine they went out armed, because I can't imagine the Egyptians giving them weapons, but I don't know. Some say they went out high-handed, in other words they were all buzzing and made up. And that's hard to imagine a little bit, because all the firstborns in Egypt have just died and the whole of the country's in mourning, so it would have been a bit, I don't know. There's another interpretation, I don't say I buy into it, but I'll just put it out there. For the word, it says it means 1/5. In other words, under this interpretation, of all the Hebrews in Egypt at the time of the Exodus, only 1/5 left with Moshe, saying that the other 80% of the heirs of the covenant simply could not bring themselves to leave Egypt. And that, I don't believe that to be the case, but what's interesting is when Cyrus gave the decree that millions of Jews in captivity in Babylon could go home, he even funded the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Only a measly 55,000 went. The rest hung around Babylon and Susa, soaking up the culture and the creature comforts. And I just wonder how many people the Lord calls and they just, quite happy, no. But no idea what they're missing out on or what they're rejecting. Just happy. Now the way the Mediterranean reading through Philistia was much shorter, it was much more clearly marked and held the promise of many sources of fresh water, food, and interaction with civilization, and as I said, it was a mere 11-day trip. The way of the desert, on the other hand, was extremely long, unbearably hot, dry, tedious, poorly marked, and promised to be very, very lonely. But in Jehovah's kingdom, reaching your destination is of secondary importance. The most important thing is that we learn the lessons he wants to teach us in the course of the journey. I just suggest to you that the best thing to do is learn your lessons quickly, so that you don't have to spend ages in the wilderness. Now, they were just about to go into the wilderness, and I can imagine it not looking like a very promising place, but perhaps there's something about the place the Torah calls Etam, or Etham, that took the edge off the prospect of heading into the desert. If you have a look at how it's spelled Aleph Tav Mem Sofet. So it starts with an Aleph and a Tav, which in Greek is Alpha and Omega. And we know what the scripture says, Yeshua says, I am the Alpha and the Omega. So that's kind of interesting. Now the letter Aleph is a Hebraic pictograph representing he who came before, i.e. Jehovah. The letter Tav is the Hebraic pictograph of a covenant sign, the mark that promises fulfillment of all covenant undertakings. And the letter Mem in Sofet form is a Hebraic pictograph representing the ultimate water source, namely the river of life, as mentioned in Revelation 22. So this place, we just say Etham, but pictorially in Hebrew it's got quite an amazing name. It forms a mural of Jehovah showing forth a covenant sign involving an endless supply of living water flowing from his throne. So that's a lovely name for the place and a lovely picture as you're just about to enter into the wilderness, isn't it? And you can imagine it must have took quite some faith, mustn't it? Because we read about these things and we think, okay, well, we know the end, so they just went along going, oh okay, we'll just go with, but these are real people, probably just completely and utterly baffled by everything that's happening. I mean, the plagues in Egypt would have baffled them, and they've got to leave everything. Even, have you ever, I don't know, me and JP went camping, there's evidence of that actually. And then just getting off and leaving your house can turn into a massive big episode, can't it? I mean, probably for yourselves coming from Conway and getting everything ready. But these people were leaving everything behind. It must have just been absolute, what is going on? So when they come to a place like Etham and it's got this lovely word picture, it must have offered them some hope, and it obviously wasn't by accident, was it? Verse 21 says, and the Lord went by them by a pillar in the day, by a pillar of cloud to lead them by the way, and a pillar by night, and a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and night. He took not away the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. And Jehovah spake unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall ye encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are entangled in the land, The wilderness hath shut them in. So Jehovah chose the route. He could have just translated them all to Sinai or Canaan in an instant. He could have just done like that. There you go, that's sorted. But he didn't. The famous expression is, he didn't want to take Israel, or just want to take Israel out of Egypt. He wanted to take Egypt out of Israel as well. And he wanted to burn the bridges, because he doesn't want his people, us, looking back over our shoulder, either in fear or hope that Pharaoh's coming to take us back home. He doesn't want us to have any association at all with Egypt, with the world. Okay, so far Jehovah has led them back and forth along the border of Egypt, right in front of Pharaoh, taunting them, as it were, like a matador with a bull. Because they could have just gone off out of his way, couldn't they? But no, the Lord's kind of like, there you go, just back and forth. Can you imagine Pharaoh getting more and more hot and, what are you doing? It says in verse 4, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that he shall follow after them, and I will be honoured upon Pharaoh and upon all his host. The Egyptians may know that I am the Lord, and they did so. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and of his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this, that we have let Israel go from serving us? Bear in mind, obviously, Moshe was nowhere near this event, didn't know what was going on in Egypt. So what we're getting here is, well, word of knowledge process, aren't we? And we get to see a transcript, as it were, of private discussions of world leaders. That's what's happening. So think about the implications. What if we could experience something similar to this firsthand in the era that we will face? We'll get a transcript of what's going on in the courts of the world leaders. It's all there for a purpose in the scripture, isn't it? Now the report was that the slaves had forcibly escaped. What a nonsense. Because it wasn't the case. He'd ordered a directive ordering them out. They'd completely forgotten about the 10 devastating plagues brought about by Jehovah due to Pharaoh's stubbornness. So what we've got is the concept of spin. The Hebrews, this is how it would have gone. The Hebrews had never been anything but trouble. They were evil people. All Egypt's problems were their fault and had nothing to do with Pharaoh's pride. After all, he is really very humble, extremely reasonable, and just wanted to be respected and obeyed. This is the kind of nonsense that would have been spoken. And people today are fed nonsense. All the time they're fed nonsense. I put this news thing up here, massacre renews gun control furor. We won't go into that, but every day we're fed spin. And most people don't even recognise it as spin. They think it's truth, and they buy it and they feed it. And he made ready his chariot, and he took his people with him, and he took 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and captains over them, every one of them. And Jehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with an high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen, and his army, and overtook them, encamping by the sea beside Pihahiroth, before Baal Zephon. And there's a picture there of the actual beach. I don't know whether you can see it properly. Not brilliant, like. But Pihahiroth, some sages have noted that the name of the place literally means the mouth or the entrance of the pits, or the caves or the holes. And they've suggested that the pit in question was not just the Sea of Reeds, but was the entrance to Sheol. This is the way they put it, which I thought was interesting, because the crossing of the Sea of Reeds is considered to be the mikveh that the people went through as a nation, and given a baptism as a mikveh. And given that in baptism we are seen to be sharing in Messiah's death, then this name of the place is actually quite fitting, isn't it? Now it says in verse 10, and when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them, and they were sore afraid. And the children of Israel cried out unto the Lord. The thing that we have to remember is the real people, real fathers, real mothers, real children, hemmed in by the Sea of Reeds. There was real confusion, there were real emotions, there was real danger, there were real lives at stake. When it says they were sore afraid and they cried out unto the Lord, they seriously were going through it. We just read about it, we just let it all just flip over our heads, don't we? This was really serious. Can you imagine it? 2.5 million people terrified, absolutely terrified and trapped. Now, obviously I put that picture up for a reason, to bring it home to us. Verse 11 says, "And they said unto Moshe, Because there were no graves in Egypt, hast thou taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt with us to carry us forth out of Egypt?" See, sometimes you read the accounts of the Israelites and you think, oh, why didn't they just trust in God? They'd seen all these miracles he'd done and all that. But we have to remember that we identify with these people. We'd have been exactly the same. We're no different, we're no better. So when you read about what they're doing and saying, recognise yourself in these things. Now there were indeed many graves in Egypt. Egypt was in fact all about graves, it always had been. Graves were woven into the very fabric of Egyptian thought and philosophy of life. Egyptian culture was absolutely fascinated with death, as is ours. And as JP was pointing out the other day, even our churches are fascinated with death. That's why you'll find graveyards all around churches. That's why you'll find inside churches there's the sarcophaguses of all kinds of dead people and all kinds of nonsense going on. But our God's a God of life and not a God of death. Consider the irony of the people when they were shouting, "Weren't there enough graves in Egypt?" Because somewhere in the crowd was the unburied sarcophagus containing the bones of Joseph. Because remember he said, "Unto his brethren I die, and God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he sware to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob." And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, "God will surely visit you." He knew all this, didn't he? "And he shall carry up my bones from hence." Okay, so Joseph's bones could have and would have been buried in a glorious Egyptian tomb, but he would have none of it. Just like Jacob, he was a visionary and he saw beyond the glory of the mummy vaults and the pyramids of Egypt. So Joseph's bones actually testified time and time again that there's something better and much grander than a burial in an Egyptian grave. Now, who had Joseph's bones? Does anyone pick up on that? Who had them? Who had Joseph's bones? I'll tell you that. While the rest of the Hebrews were busy getting up their matzah dough and collecting all the goodies that the Egyptians had given them, the gold and the silver and all this, it was Moshe who focused his attention on something altogether different, because the Torah says Moshe took Joseph's remains with him. And this is odd. I just think some of the things that they say are nuts. It says, the sages say Moshe is like a shadow of the Messiah in that he took the body out of the grave. Okay, and they say he called to Joseph and his body came from beneath the ground, just as the dead will all obey Yeshua. In Revelation 20:13 it says, "The sea gave up the dead which were in it, death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their works." There's this nonsense, I don't know whether it's not a constant say that, there's this story that Joseph's grave where he actually was actually had two big gold dogs at the side of it. If you went near there, they came alive and actually and got it. They have some funny ideas. Now, another question these people are asking, put yourself in their position and put yourself in the position you're in now, in your life right now. Why did you have to bring us out here to die in the desert? The real question they're asking is, what does the future hold? So the real issue is, what's the real meaning and ultimate purpose for which we are here, wherever it might be, wherever you're right at now. The question is, what's the meaning, what's the ultimate purpose? So freedom from bondage is great, but only if there's something meaningful to do with one's life after leaving Egypt. Why, they wanted to know, were they there? Why had Jehovah brought them to the banks of the Sea of Reeds? It obviously wasn't the promised land. Can you understand why they'd ask these questions? And do you ever find yourself asking similar questions in your own life? Why am I here? Sometimes I do. What's going on? How did I end up here doing this? That's all right. But we have to learn to trust the Lord in everything. What is this you've done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? This is another thing they're saying. Do you know why Jehovah's kept you alive and sustained you and redeemed you and brought you to this season? Do you know his plans for you and do you trust him? Why did he pick you? Why did he take you out of the darkness and bring you into the light? Why? He sends us circumstances and trials which cause us to struggle with that question. What is this you have done to us? What's going on? It's a process that as redeemed slaves we have to go through. It's all about being deprogrammed, taking Egypt out of us, taking the world out of us. So with every deliverance there must follow a period of soul searching, of questioning everything that has happened, of pondering what is to come next, and of wondering what it all means. What am I doing? Just as they were completely flummoxed, saying for us, hello. Now, in such a time, it's inevitable that negative thoughts and attitudes will surface, that sarcasm will issue forth, ugly emotions repressed for years will find expression. Ooh, not with us, surely. Surely not with us. Right, it's a rather unbecoming stage, but it's a necessary part of transitioning from a slave to an Egyptian, from a slave to Egypt mentality, to a point where you can freely surrender your will to Jehovah. And what brings it about, this unpleasant thing? Facing crisis. That's why we get sent them, isn't it? To bring out that nonsense that's within us so we can deal with it. I've got a picture there of the miracle crash on the Hudson River. Do you ever remember that? That was amazing, wasn't it? I bet there were some people going through some crises there who had a few things to say, didn't they? But the Lord brought them all through it. It's not this is what they're saying. Is not this the word that we did tell thee in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. Okay, that's garbage, isn't it? They never said that at all. This is spin again, but this is the people saying it now. And this is something we have to remember, that our memories can play tricks on us. The villain can become the victim, the prophet can become the pariah. That's why we have to learn to rely not upon what men say or what we believe, but solely on the words of God. And I couldn't believe I found a picture of a potato that looks like it's got a cup on. I think that's great. And even the cat's good, isn't it? And Moshe said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. And then this verse, which I keep getting, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. Well, I keep getting it. I've had it twice now, and it's just always come at a time, and it's like, wow. It really kind of knocks me sideways when I read it. The Lord shall fight for you. Whoa! That's good. What a thing. The Lord shall fight for you. Wow. And you shall hold your peace. That's easier said than done, isn't it? I'll learn to do it. Okay, the Lord's going to fight for me. So I took a little bit of time to have a look through the scriptures, and I found in Revelation 8:1-9 a remarkable thing. It said, and when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about the space of half an hour. So they were all holding their peace. So I wanted to read on. And I saw 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and they were given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire to the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees was burnt up, and all grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. And the third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. And this thing just always keeps fascinating me. And as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea. So silence in heaven, and then all this happens. And I started thinking, wow, great mountain thrown into the sea. What's going to happen when that happens? It's not going to be good, is it? So I checked something out. There's a debate that centres on a theory that focuses on a tsunami being caused after a large chunk of volcanic rock falls into the sea from the Cumbria volcano on the island of La Palma. Part of this volcano was highly unstable and could collapse into the ocean at any time. If it were to happen, 20,000 cubic meters of rock would fall into the open seawater and, channeled by the seabed geology, create a mega wave tsunami travelling at 500 miles an hour in all directions. See, the things we read about in Scripture, they just sound a bit fanciful and stuff, but this is real. This is all real, what we read about. This could be a possible explanation of how this is going to happen. So I thought, how real is it and how devastating are these things we read about? And this is what they say about it. The path of destruction caused by the wave would be as follows. African nations of the Western Sahara would be hit first by waves of 330 feet, followed by southern Europe, then northern France, Ireland and the UK. The eastern seaboard of the United States would be hit within 7 to 8 hours of the event, causing widespread devastation. And a wave making landfall at a height of up to 200 feet would hit the metropolises of Boston and New York. Then the tsunami would travel south along the coast, taking out beachside communities all the way to Miami and the Florida Keys. And according to Simon Day of the Benfield Greek Hazards Research Centre at the University College London, UK, it's not a question of if this happens, but when this happens. So, you know, when you read the scriptures and you just, oh yeah, okay. And we can, sometimes we kind of fancify them, don't we? We think, oh yeah, but actually this will really happen in real time on the earth. And I think we need to get our heads around it. Now this is what's happening to these people at this time. It's late in the afternoon on the 6th day after the Exodus. As the sun is set and Pharaoh's chariots and cavalry divisions are coming charging over the dunes, they're headed right towards the camp. There's a sudden panic and doubt and despair in the camp. It looks hopeless. Put yourself in the modern day equivalent to that. Okay, you're hemmed in and you've got a load of guerrillas coming towards you, all armed to the teeth, all wanting to kill you and everybody that you love. See, what we're reading about is all prophetic, so we've got to imagine how it relates to our lives. Now this is what they faced. Josephus states this. When the Egyptians had overtaken the Hebrews, they prepared to fight them, and by their multitude they drove them into a narrow place. For the number that pursued after them was 600 chariots with 50,000 horsemen and 200,000 footmen all armed. Pharaoh collected his forces, 600 chosen chariots and all the chariots of Egypt, horsemen, captains and foot soldiers, the king himself, attended by the great men of his realm, headed the attacking army, so the king's at the front. To secure the favour of the gods and thus ensure the success of their undertaking, the priests also accompanied them. So who joined forces in order to annihilate God's people? Okay. And what preceded the event of this death decree? In Exodus 5:5 it says, And Pharaoh said, Behold, the people of the land now are many, and ye make them rest from their burdens. That's all about the Sabbath. The Pharaoh didn't want them to keep the Sabbath. And that's what kick-started everything off. And perhaps there's a prophetic picture in that. And what we see as the result is the armies of the world and the priests join forces to destroy Jehovah's people, Israel. Not the people who call themselves Christians and the people who just lukewarmly, just now and again, have a nod towards being religious, but his people, his actual people, wherever they may be, whoever they are. It happened then and it will happen again. Verse 15 says, And the Lord said unto Moshe, Wherefore criest thou unto me? Speak unto the children of Israel that they go forward. But lift thou thy rod, and stretch out thine hand over the sea, and divide it. The children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them, and I will get me honour upon Pharaoh, and upon all his host, on his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten me honour upon Pharaoh, upon his chariots, and upon his horsemen. And the angel of God which went before the camp of Israel removed and went behind them, and the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. So remember all the grumblings that they've done to Moshe and Jehovah, and think about all the grumblings that we've done. Because we do, don't we? All have times that we do. Well, thankfully, Jehovah sees through all this, and he's fiercely loyal protector of all those with whom he's in covenant with, as we shall see. And Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and Jehovah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. Okay, well, the words which Torah uses to describe the force that separated the waters of, as known in Hebrew, Yam Suf, transformed the sea bed into dry land, we got it read as east wind, is Ruach Kadim, which is a good translation as Ruach, though literally meaning breath, can sometimes does refer to wind, and Kadim over there, though literally meaning from before the first, that was in the very beginning, can and sometimes does refer to the direction known as the east. But how we would translate the phrase Ruach Kadim, if we were going to do it literally, would be breath from before the first, that was in the very beginning. So that scripture reads like this, if we put that literal translation in. Moshe stretched out his hand over the sea, and Jehovah caused the sea to go back by the breath that was in the very beginning, all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. Puts a slightly different slant on it, doesn't it? Well, I think this is just fascinating. It's in the traditional Jewish telling of the crossing of the Red Sea. I always think, don't know about you, can you imagine it? Somebody's got to be the first to jump in, haven't he? Somebody has, hasn't he? Who is he? What was he like? And what made him be the one who wanted? What was going through his head? Because there had to be somebody who was the first. We've got a story about it. I was made up when I found this. Right, so this fella's called Nashon ben Aminadab, and he's the prince over the tribe of Judah, which is quite scriptural, they're always the first in. And he plays an important role. His name is mentioned 6 times in the Torah, and his name appears in the genealogies of Yeshua in Matthew 1 and Luke 3. He's one of the ancestors of David and the Messianic line. The Torah refers to him as the prince over the tribe of Judah. Now, according to the traditional telling, the Israelites understood that they got this inkling that they're going to escape through the midst of the sea, but the sea hadn't yet split. So Moshe bade the Israelites, go on then, step into the sea, but they were unwilling to do so until Nashon sprang forward and plunged into the water. Okay. He struggled under the waves and he nearly drowned, and as the water washed over him, Jehovah instructed Moshe to lift his staff and stretch out his hand so that the water might split. Nashon then led the Israelites to safety on the other side. Okay. The legend says he prayed, save me, Holy One, for the waters have reached unto the soul. I have entered deepest waters, a rushing current sweeps me away. Now, in response to this prayer, the waters parted. For this reason, a Nashon is the colloquial Hebrew term for the trailblazer, and any act of blind faith is called a Nashon's leap. Okay? So he's the first one, apparently. I think it's great. And this is all said to have happened, according to the legend, in the 4th watch. Okay? Now the rabbis teach that Nashon earned merit for the entire tribe of Judah. So what he did, even though he nearly drowned and stuff, was actually quite a good thing. And he earned this tribe the right to the kingdom of the house of David. And before we go on, there's another legend, right, that says the people, when they were in Ramses, they were actually instantly translated to Sukkot. Okay? I just want you to bear that in mind, because there's another legend you might be thinking, why is he telling us he had legends? It's just interesting to me because there's a story coming in. Matthew 14:22 to 33. Straightway Yeshua constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone, but the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. So we've got a wind here making the sea a little bit rough. And in the 4th watch of the night, the 4th watch, this is all sounding a bit like another thing. Yeshua went unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it is a spirit, and they cried out for fear. Okay, so bear in mind that the disciples are all very much aware of the legend of Nashon, right? It's the 4th watch, and a strong wind is stirring up the sea. They're all completely, they know who Nashon is, they know he's the prince of the tribe of Judah, he's the first one who dived in, he nearly drowned, and everything else. They've got all this going on in their heads. It says, but straightway Yeshua spake unto them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And the word used for Lord there is not rabbi or master, it's the word used for Jehovah, God Almighty. And he said, come, and when Peter was come down out of the ship, hang on a minute, we've all heard about Peter, lacking faith and all this. Just picture yourself on extremely rough waters. I've seen this in a completely different light after getting this. He said, and he walked on the water to go to Yeshua. See, there had to be one, didn't there, who dived in there first. It was Peter here. Okay, but when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and he began to sink, just like Nation had done. And he cried, just like Nation had done, Lord, save me. Immediately Yeshua stretched forth his hand, just as Moshe had done, and caught him and said unto him, O thou of little faith. Well, I checked that out actually in the Greek. It's just one word. There's a lot into that. It could have just been saying, oh, little faith. It could have just been like a nickname he had for him. Wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were coming to the ship, the wind ceased. So what I'm putting to you is the fact that he knew the legend of this fellow who was the first one to dive in. He knew it was the fourth watch and that this wind was stirring up the sea. Now, this character called Nation, he received honour for his tribe. And I'm just saying, the way we look at Peter and we all say, oh, he sank, didn't he, what an idiot. Actually, what he did was actually really rather amazing. Because if you've ever been on a boat when the weather's not great, the last thing you want to do is get out of the boat. But he actually did. And he walked out to Yeshua. And somebody has to be the first to dive in, don't they? And just as Nation got some credit, I think Peter should. Rather than always being described as, oh yeah, he faffed up again, didn't he? He only faffed up. I think that's a bit unfair on him. It says, they who in the ship came and worshipped him, saying of a truth, thou art the Son of God. See, they were aware of these legends. This would have registered in their head so incredibly. Wow, just like Moshe brought out his staff and rescued him. And this is incredible. So now, because you think to yourself, don't think, why are they saying it at this point? Because they've seen all these miracles, surely they must know it. But it's at this point they're like, wow, of a truth thou art, did this mean something to them? John 6:21, it says this, and they were willingly received him into the ship, and immediately the ship was at land whither they went. So just like the legend says they were translated from Ramesses to Sukkot, in John 6:21 it says that the ship that they were in was translated immediately as well. And I just think that's odd, because there's no other bit in Yeshua's ministry that I can think of where his disciples get translated somewhere, and it's tied to this story, which I thought was quite bizarre. In verse 22, back in the Torah portion, it says, and the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right and on their left. And I don't know whether you can see, but yeah, that's the actual beach where it actually happened. This fella here is Ron Wyatt, quite a remarkable character. He's like the Indiana Jones of the real world. This is a column that they found. But this here is where you get the Pharaoh saying, oh, they've been entangled in the wilderness, because it's just like a big maze with mountains either side. And that's where the pillar of fire would have stopped the Egyptians from getting through. There's another picture of it there. I don't know whether you could, I'll just put another one up so you can see it better. And here we've got the columns. Ron Wyatt found two pillars King Solomon put on both beaches to commemorate the Red Sea crossing. I think it's interesting that in Phoenician letters, archaic Hebrew and blood, it contained the words Mitzrayim, which is the word for Egypt, Solomon, Edom, death, Pharaoh, Moshe, and Jehovah, indicating that King Solomon had set up these columns as a memorial to the miracle of the crossing of the sea. Now, Saudi Arabia does not admit tourists, and perhaps being unauthorized visitors, the Saudi authorities have since removed this column and replaced it with a flag marker where it once stood. Bizarre, isn't it? People don't want to record of what's happened. Now here's Kevin Fisher at the red granite column marking the crossing site in October 2005, and there's a picture of the flag marker on the Arabian side. Now, this is nuts. The ridge slopes down. Okay, this is where they would have crossed. This is the topography of the land. At a 60-degree angle, levelling off at about 900 feet, and then gradually rises to meet the western shore. On either side of this ledge under the water, There's a 5,000 foot deep drop, as deep and as wide as the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Now, when I got that bit in my head, you know, it says there was a wall of water either side. Remember that thing with Charlton Heston, and you see him going through, it's like, the effects are amazing. Remember my dad saying, oh, it's amazing. Oh, I've seen anything like it. And obviously, it's like state of the art for the day. And it looked impressive, and it's like, wow, that would have been absolutely freaky. But the actual reality of it was even more freaky. 900 feet high, the water would have been. Wow. It makes me a bit tingly thinking about it. Because they were just normal people like us. Can you imagine what they would? Oh, I don't know if they would have been. Oh, this isn't right, so just keep walking there. This is 900 feet either side. It's absolutely insane. 23 says, and the Egyptians pursued and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians. He took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moshe, stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters, all 900 foot of them, may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moshe stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared. And the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them, but the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. Thus Jehovah saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. And there's archaeological evidence, and as I say, I'd love for us all to get to see this film, Patterns of Evidence. But I've just put some pictures together here. This is, I'm sure there's a lot of people who've seen this kind of stuff already. See, what happens is the coral attaches itself to metal, because coral feeds off metal. The wood would have all basically rotted away, but the coral attaches itself to the metal, and you see all these chariot wheels and stuff underneath that particular bit of the sea where it levels off at 900 foot. Some of the pictures here, don't know whether you can see them properly up there, just about here. Okay, I think this is nuts, this. Pharaoh's chariot wheel, right, the wood's been rotted, but the metal hub encrusted with coral, and there's a gold rim clearly seen as the coral doesn't attach itself to silver or gold. Now, only the Pharaoh had 4-spoke gold chariot wheels. So what we could actually be looking at is the actual wheel of the chariot that the Pharaoh, who defied Jehovah and Moshe, was travelling. The actual one. It's nuts, isn't it? And that's it there. And you can see the coral attaches itself in the middle there to the metal bit, but around the edge it doesn't attach itself to the gold. And that's what you've got. I don't know which picture you can see it best on. I can see it much better than me. I just think it's insane, isn't it, to be able to look at something. Wow. I think, see, it all brings it all out, isn't it? They're not just stories, this is real. It's real. And when we hear about the things and read about the things in Revelation, oh, and a mountain tossed into the sea burning with fire, and there's waves, and the third of the ships are all, it's real, it's all real. Here's some more pictures. Okay. So don't underestimate the power of Jehovah, your covenant partner, to provide you with safe passage, to bring you to himself and to the place of fulfillment of your destiny and your purpose in life. He will do whatever he has to do. If the situation requires it, he will most definitely make a way when there seems to be no way. Verse 31 says, and Israel saw that great work which Jehovah did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared Jehovah and believed Jehovah and his servant Moshe. Okay, we're going to finish with this. This is we've got the Feast of Unleavened Bread coming up. I always wondered, why is it 7 days? Okay, the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts with a convocation and a sacrifice, the Passover sacrifice that redeemed us. Then on the 7th day we have another holy convocation, but there's no fire offering, no sacrifice then. That tells us the Passover sacrifice was enough. Okay, so the Hebrews left after the Passover meal and wandered to the Red Sea. All that time, okay, they've been redeemed. But all that time, the Egyptians were free to harass them. It was on the seventh day that the hold that Egypt still had over them was completely broken. Okay, 2 Peter 3:8 says, "But, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day." So let's put this in perspective. For 6 days, Egypt still had power to harass them. On the seventh day, Egypt, Pharaoh and his armies were destroyed. Okay, consider this as a 6,000-year reign of man, waiting for the seventh day, which is the millennial rule of Yeshua, when the power of Egypt is totally broken. Okay, we've been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, but we're waiting by the shores of the sea, waiting for the time when we are delivered from the pull that sin and the world has over us, as described in Romans 7. When its power to harm us is totally destroyed and we have to struggle no more. So let's see what happens on the seventh day, the millennium. Remember that leaven, this is the feast of unleavened bread. Remember that leaven represents sin and false doctrine. Okay. Romans 7:24 says, "O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death?" Your very bodies are not great. Wow, seventh day, what happens at the beginning of the millennium? 1 Corinthians 15:52. "In a moment, the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump of the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised. We shall be changed. This corruption will put on incorruption." And Isaiah 2:3 regarding the false doctrine says, "And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go to the mountain of Jehovah, to the house of God of Jacob. He will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of Jehovah from Jerusalem." There'll be no more nonsense, no more false doctrine. Thank you very much. Then we will sing the song of Moshe. Revelation 15:1-5 says, "I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvellous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. I saw, as it were, a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And they sing the song of Moshe, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvellous are thy works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of saints." That's something to look forward to, isn't it? So that's end of part 1. I've put a picture there of Mr. T as a bit of a hint. Do I like Mr. T? There he is in the picture of him looking simply fantastic. When I was a kid, I thought he was the coolest man on the earth. I even had a Lego man, and I took his hair off and got a black felted pen and painted the Mohican on his head. And I just thought he was amazing. Well, there you go, we'll have a little break. Okay.
Charlie, can we just...
Ah. Then sang Moshe. Moses have written it there in the Hebrew. And the children of Israel, this song unto Jehovah, and spake, saying, I will sing unto Jehovah, for you triumphed gloriously, the horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. So we'll start with the song. Hey! But this bit then sang Moshe, in the Hebrew is Yeshua, and the Yud at the beginning of the word sang denotes future tense. So this song will be sung. This whole song is prophetic. Now, so the thing that I find fascinating about this as well is it's, can you imagine how ecstatic they all were to see their enemies vanquished? This was a real time of real praise, worship of the Lord. So we're going to read through it, and as we do, just imagine the mood in the camp. Just imagine how they were all feeling, having witnessed what they just witnessed. Bear in mind it's a future song, this is something that will be sung. Jehovah is my strength and my song, he has become my salvation. That would have been, he is my Yeshua, he is my God, and I will prepare him an habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. Don't often hear that, do you? Especially in nativity plays and stuff. Oh, there's a man of war! Is it all right on? I don't know whether I like the sound of that. The Lord is his name, Jehovah is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his host had he cast into the sea. His chosen captains are also drowned in the sea. The depths have covered them, they sank into the bottom as a stone. Thy right hand which always indicated of the Messiah. O Yehovah has become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Yehovah, hath dashed in pieces the enemy. And in the greatness of thine excellency thou hast overthrown them that rose up against thee. Thou sentest forth thy wrath, which consumed them as stubble. Imagine he's singing all this, and absolutely singing his head off at this point. And with thy blast of thy nostrils the waters were gathered together, the floods stood upright as an heap, and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. It's almost like they go, I just can't believe it, what you did, it's just amazing. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil, my lust shall be satisfied upon them, I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them. Thou didst blow with thy wind, the sea covered them, they sank as lead in the mighty waters. Woe is like unto thee, O Lord among the gods, who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders. Now, this is what the sages say about this whole event. They say that a prophetic vision was released in such volume that even a maidservant at the Sea of Reed saw more than any biblical prophet like Isaiah, Ezekiel and Jeremiah ever saw. This is like basically the whole nation worshipping and singing to the Lord completely. And sometimes in scriptures it talks about, oh, I remember when you sang to me, my first love. This is a real moments when they're absolutely and utterly just adoring Him. Now, it sounds to me like a foreshadowing of what Joel 2:28-29 sounds like. It shall come to pass afterward, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and also upon the servants and upon thy handmaids. In those days I will pour out my spirit. The whole thing that they're singing here is prophetic. That's what we have to bear in mind. All these people are singing prophetic words to the Lord. Thou stretched out thy right hand, and the earth swallowed them. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth the people which thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them in thy strength unto thy holy habitation. The people shall hear and be afraid, sorrow shall take hold on the inhabitants of Palestina. Then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed, the mighty men of Moab trembling shall take hold upon them. All the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. So these things have yet to come to pass. The nations will tremble before Yehovah when He brings and establishes His people, both natural and engrafted, into His holy place. It says in verse 16, fear and dread shall fall upon them by the greatness of thine arm. They shall be as still as a stone till thy people pass over, O Yehovah, till the people pass over which thou hast purchased. Thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance, in the place, O Yehovah, which thou hast made for thee to dwell in the sanctuary, O Yehovah, which thy hands have established. And then this scripture, which is amazing. The Lord shall reign forever and ever. That's amazing. Amen. Amen. I love this one. I've got a Handel's Messiah. I'll bought it for me. And if you stick it on, and it's that bit, isn't it? Hallelujah chorus. Makes me have little goosebumps. I couldn't even do it, just trying to sing it. That's what I always wanted for me, for my dream house. I wanted a doorbell, like when you rang it, 300 watts, belted out, Handel's Messiah. Oh, just, whoa! I also wanted a trampoline and a fireman's pole, much less holy. Verse 19 says, for the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And we're going to have a look at this lady in a minute. Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. I can only imagine how they danced. Miriam answered and said, sing ye to the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. Let's talk about dance. Okay. Biblical dance was an expression of celebration. For example, when King David victoriously returned from battle with the Philistines, the women of Israel came out singing and dancing to meet him. When King David brought the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, he danced before it all the way into the city. The prophet Jeremiah tells us that when the Messiah comes, there will be dancing. And it says, then the virgin will rejoice in the dance, and the young men and the old together. Now, that whole Hebraic way of thinking is celebrate. And they do it by dancing. Okay, I've got some great pictures here. It was a natural expression of joy and worship in ancient Israel. The psalmist enjoined the worshippers in the temple to praise Jehovah with dancing. It's all very British. It says, let them praise his name with dancing. Let them sing praises to him with timbrel and lyre. Praise him with timbrel and dancing. Praise him with string instruments and pipe. You've got these pictures here of these people who really know what that's all about. They're really getting into it. And look at them. Hey! A break dancing rabbi. I've seen the likes. It's good, isn't it? Another one, well, they just got too carried away. This bunch on top of the table. Well, see, we serve a God, don't we, who is a God of life. But he come to give us life and give it to us abundantly. And expressing our joy in knowing the creator of the whole universe in dance. What a natural thing to do. To just, I don't come out. But to be a thankful people, aren't we? And we're the people on this planet got the most reason to be joyful, the most reason to want to dance. Now Miriam, the prophetess as she's described, she's also described as Aaron's sister. And you can ask, when did she prophesy? And this is what they say. When she was known only as Aaron's sister before Moses was born, she said, my mother is destined to bear a son who will save Israel. Apparently, this is the story. When the decree was issued that all the babies had to be thrown in the Nile, Moshe's mum and dad separated because they thought, we don't want to have a baby now. But she said, no, you must have a baby because it will be the one who will deliver Israel. So they got back together again. Now, that's just the story, but what we do know is she was a brave young girl who watched her mother place her brother in a basket and place him by the river. And when her mother left, she remained waiting to see what would happen to her little brother. And when he is found by Pharaoh's daughter, she steps forward and offers to find a midwife who could nurse the child. And by doing so, she was able to reunite her mother and her brother. And she was probably only about 9 or 10 at the time. And there's a better look at that picture. Now, not only had she heard and believed that Jehovah would deliver them from the hand of Pharaoh, she prepared for it. It appears that she encouraged the other women to do so too. She was an encourager, this is the way she's seen, who built up the faith of the other women. The women were prepared while still in slavery. They learned how to play tambourines so that they could worship God. They were ready and waiting for what God would do for them. Because you've got to ask every hang on, they've just crossed the Red Sea and there they all are, they've all got tambourines and they're all dancing and stuff. She's leading the way. What's happening there? Rashi wrote this, he wrote that the righteous women of that generation were so certain that the Holy One, blessed be he, is what they say, would perform miracles for them. They took timbrels out of Egypt. Okay? So when times are dark or painful, we need the same kind of expectant faith as Miriam's. And we need to prepare ourselves for victory in our lives. Because it's very easy, isn't it, to get very downhearted and just, I think they're on slavery, it's all gone wrong. Well, through all that, hang on, no, that's not the attitude, is it? We're to look forward and we're to know, hang on, Scripture tells us victory's coming. Let's prepare ourselves to have one great big fantastic dance. So, interestingly, bizarre this, in the last few years, Hasidic women have been making tambourines in preparation for the arrival of the Messiah. That's nuts, isn't it? Just in the last few years, that's been happening. Right, so somewhere, this is what happens now. They've just had a big dance, they're all made up and all that's gone on. Somewhere on the 3-day march that followed the ecstasy of the Sea of Reeds, the reality set in. It gets very, 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 very hot. Your feet are hurting, the sand's blowing in your face and the babies are crying and the donkeys are going nuts. Okay? Read verse 22. It says, so Moshe brought Israel from the Red Sea and they went out to the wilderness of Shur and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. That would have been tough. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. We've got to ask, this is a question that they asked. Were the waters of Marah bitter or were the people bitter? Often, this is something to note as well, when we tell thirsty people about Yeshua, who's the fountain of living water, who really need him, okay? They don't drink because to them what we're saying is bitter and they reject it. But that's because they're bitter. But us, who love Yeshua on the other hand, we're washed in the water of the word, aren't we? We just get stuck in and dive right in. We just love it and can't get enough. But if you're not come across that, the words of life that you're saying to people, they just reject. And it's a similar picture to what's going on here. It's not what we're saying that's bitter, it's them that's bitter. Now Marah is also the name given to the bitter substance in which we did the matzah during Pesach, to remember the bitterness of the bondage in Egypt. And I'm looking forward to it, because you'll all pull fantastic expressions on your faces, because it's made of horseradish. I don't know if we've done it, haven't we? It's like, whoa! We know where to get horseradish melted, find the right place. So looking forward to get a camera and take pictures of everybody's face. So why Marah and why the struggle? Why are you bringing us here? What's going on? It's because he wants more from us and for us than infatuation and ecstatic praise. He wants more than, everything's going great. Wants more for us. He wants us to reach our potential, our purpose, our destiny. He's made it tough. He's caused our skin to chafe with heat. He's caused the feet to blister. He's caused us to thirst like never before. And then he's led us to the bitter waters so we can have a big stew about it. Why? Because he wants our relationship with him to be real. Not just fluffy when everything's going right. That's not what he's about. He wants a real relationship. Because the people murmured, we'd never do that. Against Moshe, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried unto Jehovah, and Jehovah showed him a tree, okay, which when he had cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. Right, we as his redeemed people are in the wilderness, and we'll go through bitterness, don't we? Everybody will have things in their life which are bitter. Yeah? Experiences. I'm sure everybody in the room has got something going on in life now which is, not sweet, but Jehovah will make it sweet. Okay, so what tree did Jehovah show Moshe? Where was the tree? That it was hidden from Moshe until he showed it to him. What kind of tree changes stagnant pools into fountains of living water? Perhaps the same kind of tree that the leaves of which are for the healing of the nations. The tree of life, perhaps. In Genesis 3:24 it says this, so he drove out the man and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims with a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Right? Our flesh has got sin housed in it, and it was because of Jehovah's mercy that we're protected from the tree of life and having to spend an eternity in a body that's predisposed to doing the wrong thing. Now, in the story of this parsha, what we've seen is redemption by the blood, which is Yeshua's sacrifice, followed by deliverance from the hassle and harassment of Egypt, which happened on the seventh day, which is your first day of unleavened bread, seventh day. And that's been likened to deliverance from the pull of this world and the pull of the flesh, the sinful nature, which will be put off at Yeshua's second coming. And then we've got the tree of life. This is how they see in this waters of Marah and the tree that's thrown in. Now, note that in Scripture, the only other thing described as being protected by cherubim are the words of Jehovah that are found in the Ark of the Covenant. So you've got the cherubim protecting the tree of life in the garden, and then you've got these cherubim protecting the words of Jehovah in the Ark of the Covenant. And Proverbs 3:13-18 says this, happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding. Now, just so we've just got an idea of how brilliant these things are, it goes on to say, for the merchandise of it is better than the merchandise of silver, and the gain thereof than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all things that thou canst desire are not to be compared unto her. Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honour, and her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to them that lay hold upon her, and happy is everyone that retaineth her. Okay? Wisdom and understanding, the tree of life. Proverbs 9:10 says us that the fear of Jehovah is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. So this is the tree of life then, isn't it? So those who fear him, what do? They tremble at his word. We've even got Yeshua described as that righteous branch. He was from Nazareth, which means branch town, and he was the word made flesh. The Torah is our tree of life, isn't it? Torah makes life's bitter experiences sweet. So when life's really we're full of all that, and we need to throw something in the midst, don't we? And that's his teaching and instruction, and that makes things sweet. In the Hebrew is matach, it means pleasing and nurturing. So we come to the waters with the bitterness of life. What's that? Disappointment in people, heartache, failed ventures, anger, resentment, jealousy. Then the waters will taste bitter. But if we let go of these things by following his teaching and his instruction, the Torah, then the waters are made pleasing and nurturing. It's in following his instruction instead of following our own path that we find sweetness in life. And that's where the most important part of the Mara experience is found in verse 26. And it says this: and said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and wilt do that which is right in his sight, and wilt give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am Jehovah that healeth thee. When it says diseases there, okay, he says none of these diseases will I put upon you. The Hebrew word is machala, meaning not only infirmities of the body, but meaning also worries, sorrows, griefs, terrors, and weaknesses of all kind. If we hearken to his words, these things don't come near us. So when we come and the waters are bitter, what do we need to do? We need to turn to his teachings and instructions, and then all the worries, the sorrows, the griefs, the terrors, the weaknesses, they all fall away. Rashi, his explanation of what it meant, if you hearken, he says, this is the acceptance of the Torah that they should accept upon themselves. And you do, the scripture says. This means the performance of the commandments, not enough to just listen. You're supposed to do them as well. And you listen closely. This means you should incline your ears to be meticulous in fulfilling them. Don't just let it wash. Meticulous. This means, wow, recognize what we've got hold of, the words of life. Treat them as such. All his statutes, things that are decreed of the king, some of them without any apparent rationale, with which the evil inclination finds fault, saying, what is the sense of prohibiting of these things? Why are they prohibited? For example, the prohibitions of wearing shetnez, which is a mixture of wool and linen, and eating pork, and the ritual of the red pepper, and they're like. The thing is, as science has moved along, we now have an understanding of why we shouldn't mix wool and linen. And we now have an understanding of why eating pork is bad for us scientifically. But we're to follow his commandments just because he said them. That's what a statute is. It's decreed by the king, and we're his servants, and we just do it anyway, in faith. And every time we find out, the more we find out, the more we realise, oh yeah, he knew what he was talking about. So we're no longer to live by, which means to be in bondage to, our appetites or our emotions, or any societal priorities, definitions of success, dreams or values. We are instead, from this point forward, called to structure all the aspects of our lives around and upon Jehovah's instructions for living. We don't do what a pharaoh or president or king orders us to do, or what some temptress or manipulative friend seductively suggests or nags us to do. But we must instead do what he has said is right and proper and just for us to do. Okay, he deserves and asks for our undistracted, undivided attention and our unconflicted loyalty. And I put two pictures up there. There's the bird, there's the cat watching the bird. He wants our attention, okay, and he wants our loyalty. There's people all around this country at this moment fiercely cheering on 11 fellas who all run around in short pants. Now, The Lord wants us to be fiercely loyal to Him and to cheer His name. It's not lost on me that most football matches occur on the Sabbath, and it's just a form of worship. Now, if we are to survive and not to thirst to death, we must learn to treasure His instructions for living as absolutely our most valuable possession in the world. It means we devote serious time, effort and energy in meditating on His Word, memorising His words and talking about them and applying them to real life situations every day of our life. Serious time devoted. If you understand what the Scriptures are, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want the bitter waters of life to be made sweet? Verse 27 says, and they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Another important place, just like Mara was, but this is more like an exotic honeymoon destination. This is just fabulous. This is lovely. This is. So, 12. What's the significance? In Hebrew, it's the symbolic of a basic group that when aggregated together makes up a whole. For example, 12 represents the number of new moons it takes to make a complete year on the agricultural cycle, and the number of major constellations visible in the heavens. Also, we know Yeshua had 12 disciples, and the number 70 is massively important to the Hebrew mindset. It represents universality. The world was repopulated after the flood by exactly 70 descendants of Noah. There were 70 members of Yaakov's family went to Egypt. Yeshua sent out 70 disciples. 70 nations came from Babel with 70 languages, and there were 70 tribal elders appointed by Moshe. So we're going to move on, verse 16, see what we've got here. They took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day, the second month after departing out of the land of Egypt. Oh, I don't believe they're going to do this again. The whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moshe and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, would to God we died in the hand, by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full, for you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Okay, so they're complaining again. Like I said, we're not dissimilar to these people. We can't sit here and judge them because we're just pretty much the same. I love this picture I found that says, any fool can criticise, condemn and complain, and most fools do. There you go. We all do it, don't we? Then said Jehovah unto Moshe, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. So why manna? Why does he do this whole thing? The main reason Jehovah gave us manna was not to feed his people, because he'd managed to do that fine at Elim. Everything he did was like an oasis there, wasn't it? The main reason that he gave them it was to teach them another vital lesson, which is about the radical new lifestyle involving keeping the Sabbath. And this is how it reads in the scripture. It shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moshe and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, and even then ye shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning then ye shall see the glory of Jehovah, for that he heareth your murmurings against Jehovah, and what are we that ye murmur against us? And Moshe said, this shall be when Jehovah shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For that Jehovah heareth your murmurings which you murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against Jehovah. Please bear that in mind as well. When you're moaning at each other, who you're actually moaning at, it's offensive to the Lord. And Moshe spake unto Aaron, and said unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before Jehovah, for he hath heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aaron spoke unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of Jehovah appeared in the cloud. And Jehovah spoke unto Moshe, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, at even ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am Jehovah your God. And it came to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, it is manna, for they wist not what it was. Manna just means, what is it? What the heck is it? And Moshe said unto them, this is the bread which Jehovah hath given you to eat. This is the thing which Jehovah hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, and an omer for every man. According to the number of your persons, take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had not an over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating, and Moshe said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding they hearkened not unto Moshe, but some of them left it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moshe was wroth with them. So this is something that I think we should just stop and have a look at. The whole thing with Israel leaving Egypt can be compared to the new believer. Right? A baby has got to learn to walk, to talk, to eat solid food. Israel's first 49 days in the wilderness were filled with growing experiences. The Hebrews were basically wandering around the desert thinking, what am I doing here? What am I doing? I don't belong here. What am I doing? Possibly feeling completely inadequate, totally confused, with no steady, familiar frame of reference with which to balance the ship. Everything was new, wasn't it? They would have been out of the depth, they were uncomfortable, they were asking more questions they were getting answers for. One minute they're all excited, the next minute they're panicking. They were no longer slaves, but what were they? It's just like the new believer, they were all totally unsettled. And to one extent and another, so are we. Even if we've been walking with the Lord for a while. Now manna was amazing stuff. It had all the nutrition necessary to sustain a large population for 40 years. You know this food that we eat now, it's just garbage, isn't it? Total garbage. We have to be very careful about eating decent food. Can you imagine this stuff? Man, it was amazing, wasn't it? I mean in terms of like healthy for you and good. It appeared every morning and in an adequate amount so that no one went hungry. It could be cooked, boiled or baked, however it could not be stored. If anyone tried to hoard it, it turned rancid overnight. See, all this is prophetic as well. I wonder whether this speaks at a time when the Lord will provide for us, when the world's going to be crackers. Crackers, I'd say crackers. Some other food substance. Now manna can teach us about money and materialism. God provides the bounty, the material world for our welfare. He provides adequately for our needs, sometimes in scarcity, sometimes with abundance, but always with sufficiency. Because get this, it said, he who gathered much had no excess, and he who gathered little had no lack. When we try to hoard wealth, it can turn into something spiritually ugly. Just as the manna turned rancid and wormy, hoarded wealth sickens the soul, because it causes us to cling to material things, and we no longer need to rely on God, because we can rely upon our savings and our investments. We no longer need to pray for our daily bread, as Yeshua taught us to do. As Yeshua warned us, truly I say to you, it is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He just said then afterwards, isn't he? Nothing's impossible with the Lord. Right, not there's any special merit in being poor, but it is much more difficult to be affluent and keep your spiritual foot. If you're wealthy, you've got to keep your hand open and generous. And the wealthy disciple must be able to lay it all aside for the sake of the kingdom. And I just want us to think in these terms. Don't be a rich person who ignores the needs of the poor. If you've got a bed, food and heating, you're rich. So that's all of us, isn't it? Verse 21 says, and they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe. So they all came and told Moses, right, could it be that the manna that they saw on the ground on the Friday morning was the same amount they saw every other weekday? Could it be they did the same amount of labour on the Friday? And could it be that what happened was a miracle of multiplication in the baskets, doubling that which they'd scooped up? Otherwise, why would it say in the Torah, all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moshe? Is that what's happened? We don't know. It's just an idea. And he said unto them, this is that which Jehovah hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seethe that ye will seethe. And that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moshe bade, and it did not stink, neither were there any worm therein. And Moshe said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto Jehovah. To do ye shall not find it in the field. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. It came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day, it's always some, isn't it, to gather, and they found none. How not? And Jehovah said unto Moshe, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Okay, verse 29 is quite interesting. It says, see, for that Jehovah hath given you the Sabbath. It's a gift. The Sabbath is a gift. It's incredible, isn't it? And this is what makes me laugh as well. There's all these people, when we mention the Sabbath, yeah, but I won't be able to do that. And what happens if such and I won't do? This is all the Lord basically saying here, it's okay, I've got it all in hand. It'll all be sorted out. Everything that you need, all that, it can all be worked out. It's not a problem. And yet even here it says, some of them who had enough, they still went out looking for more. They just couldn't help themselves. But it says here that Jehovah hath given you the Sabbath. It's a gift, isn't it? We have to be so grateful. And I don't get people either, because if you think about it, he's saying, have a day of rest with me. I'm the creator of the universe. Have a day of rest with me. It's not like he's telling us to do something horrible, or you understand what I mean? And anyway, he says this, he says, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. He makes a way for you to keep the Sabbath. Bide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. Oh, that's interesting. Now we know that Moshe gets read every Sabbath in the synagogues in the times of the early church, because it says in Acts 15:21. But these scriptures that we've just read in Exodus place emphasis on not working by saying to stay at home. So could it also be pointing out that the Sabbath is a time for families to come together in the home to enjoy with each other rest and company of Jehovah? It seems to be suggesting it, doesn't it? Now, I'm just going to suggest that maybe Friday night's a good time for families to be home together, resting and enjoying the Sabbath. Maybe enjoy breakfast together on Saturday, in readiness for coming to hear Moses being read and bringing thanks to Jehovah for all creation. And this is another thing as well. This is something that should be celebrated on the Sabbath. It was instituted in creation. Celebrate creation on the Sabbath. It's a wonderful thing as well, isn't it? To just take time out to notice. Look at them trees, and isn't this beautiful? And look at the sky. I'm a bit soft because I spent that much to my life as a drunk wandering around in a big blurry mist. Didn't notice nothing. And now the Lord's opened my eyes. It's like everything's like, wow, what's the matter, isn't it? I probably look like a simpleton half the time, but I don't mind. We're to have thanks for the Lord, aren't we? I think that the Sabbath is a wonderful gift and a great time to celebrate creation and all He's given us. Verse 30 says, so the people rested on the 7th day, and the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed. Okay, get a bit of an idea. White, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. There's a thing later on when they start moaning about the manna, and there's this thing that the sages say that what the manna actually tasted like was this. If you were grateful and thankful, it tasted fabulous. It tasted like your favourite meal. But if you were a real moany, like the bitter waters, you'd eat it and it tasted horrible. So there's a lot to be said for the attitude we live our lives with, isn't it? And Moshe said, this is the thing which the Lord commandeth, fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moshe said unto Aaron, take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before Jehovah to be kept for your generations. That's probably somewhere in the well, isn't it? And as Jehovah commanded Moshe, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. The children of Israel did eat manna for 40 years, until they came to a land inhabited. They did eat manna, until they came unto the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is a 10th part of an ephah. And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin after their journeys, according to the commandment of Jehovah, and pitched in Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore, you know what's coming, don't you? The people did chide with Moshe, and they said, give us water that we may drink. Can you imagine him at this point? Because when you complain to the people that the Lord's placed in charge of you, you're actually complaining to the Lord. So, but he's starting to get it. He's getting the ump now as well, because he says, why chide ye with me? What's going on? Wherefore do you tempt Jehovah? He knows that when they're having a go at him, it's tempting and trying Jehovah as well. But you can see he's starting to get to that point now. He's getting a little bit fed up. And the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moshe and said, wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst? They don't mince about, do they? So not so long ago they were all ecstatic with praise. But here's the problem. They left Egypt not just with Egyptian silver, gold and garments. They left Egypt loaded down with Egyptian thoughts and attitudes and mindsets. And so do we. And that's where most of our complaining and moaning and all that kind of caper can come from. Because they were used to depending on Egypt for everything. From the sustenance to their entertainment, just like us. So for this reason, Jehovah purposed to wean his redeemed from the Egyptian way of living, thinking, eating and drinking. And basically, they had to detox. And detoxing is never pleasant and never brings out the best in anyone. And if anybody is as detoxed, you usually feel, well, I think 100% of the time you feel rubbish and much worse before you ever start feeling better. Note, we grumble, don't we? But Jehovah's not put off by our grumbling, thankfully. He sees us not as we are, but as we were created to be. And he will detox us from the garbage of the world to get it out of our system. And Moshe cried unto the Lord, saying, what shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. That suggests, when they were moaning on him, they were really moaning on him, and he's just freaking out now. And Jehovah said unto Moshe, go on before the people, and take with thee of the elders of Israel and thy rod, wherewith thou smotest the river, take in thine hand and go. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moshe did in the sight of the elders of Israel. This is believed to be the rock, the very rock, okay? Because in this place, there's only a half an inch of rainfall every decade. And yet, this rock has been split, and inside it, there's all the evidence of water erosion. Now, there's this picture here, which gives you a bit of an idea of the size of it. I can't wait for this film to come out, the patterns of evidence, because I love looking at things and imagine being there. And it looks like a very arid, dry place, and I reckon, being honest, I probably would have been one of the ones chiding Moses. I'm thirsty. But this could well be the very rock, and there's an artist's impression of it gushing forth. Can you imagine how they all felt? And verse 7 says, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the chiding of the children of Israel. So they were having to go with them that much, and it bothered them that much, even named the place after them, and because they tempted Jehovah, saying, is Jehovah among us or not? Okay, so they've just had this miracle. See, all the way through this, you're thinking, hang on a minute. They've had this lovely time by the Red Sea where they all danced. It was all happy, and they were dancing like, wow, wonderful. All singing prophetic song. They've had this place with the bitter waters, but then they've had that. Oh, okay. And then he took them to Edom, and it was lovely and everything. It was like, oh, palm trees and everything. Oh, it's brilliant. Why are we having all these rubbish bits thrown in the middle? Why are we having all these rubbish bits? Well, it's a bit like our lives, isn't it? But the Lord only sends us trials for the reason of getting rid of all the garbage that's in us, detoxing us and taking us from out of the world. Now here's another bit that's coming up, which is a test. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Okay. And Moshe said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So here there's no stand and see the deliverance of Jehovah. This time it's choose men and prepare for battle. Okay? So we have to learn, we can't always just rely and sit back and wait for Jehovah to provide for us with a miracle deliverance. And I've got some pictures there of these people who, if you call them preppers, they're not just sitting on their laurels going, oh, he'll do it all for us. But there are some amongst us who are men and women of action. Hurrah, yeah, hurrah. Hey, and there we go. This is high intensity training. Me and JP went man camping. We survived one day in the wilds of Betsy Cohen. But we just think, one day we might have to run. We might have to run just as they did, and we just want to know what it's like. We survived the night, didn't we? Right, but part of our training involves learning when and under what circumstances we've been called to lace up combat boots and wield those Egyptian swords that washed upon the sea, shore of the Sea of Reeds, when the situation demands it. Sometimes we have to take action, don't we? So, Joshua did as Moshe had said to him before with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill, and it came to pass when Moshe held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moshe's hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on the one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady. Right, the words used is eminah, which is the word of faith, which shows you that faith's got something to do with being steadfast until the going down of the sun. But so what actually says, he had faithful hands until the sun came. Now the word for sun is shemesh, and I've checked this out. Malachi 4:2, talking about the Messiah says, but unto you that fear my name shall the sun, and it's the same word, shemesh, of righteousness arise, with healing in his wings. The thing we've got to get here is when his hands are up in the air, they went in, it says he had faithful hands. Okay, steadfastness and faithfulness, all linked and tied to victory in the Lord. Because it's all very well, isn't it? No, we've got to be steadfast. Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. This is nuts. It actually isn't the edge of his sword. The word pay is used, and everybody who's done a little bit of Hebrew knows what that means. It actually says, Joshua discomfited, weakened Amalek and his people with the sword of his mouth. Wow. So this isn't surprising, because Joshua is another shadow of the Messiah. In Revelation 19:15 it says, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with it he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. He treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. So another picture again of the Messiah. He discomfited Amalek with the sword of his mouth. So there's a lesson as well in what happens when Jehovah's people are attacked, in that it's got a lot more to do with what's going up on above, i.e. the spiritual realm. So the battle was going on, but it was actually where Moses' hands were up above them. That was the important thing, wasn't it? So Jehovah requires us to do our part. We have to prepare, stand firm against our enemies. But we've always got to remember this. No enemy of Israel fights us alone. Anyone who attacks Israel has to deal with Jehovah, just as they deal with us. We're never alone. We're never alone. Okay? Now Amalek represents all the nations of the world, because the sages say that Amalek rallied as many as he could to make war against Israel. And they say he was particularly evil in that he tried to pick off the weakest. So we've got a picture here of all these people coming up against God's chosen people. Okay? Now, the Messiah, Joshua, he dealt with them with what? The sword of his mouth. What's that? It's the word of God. Verse 14 says, and Jehovah said unto Moshe, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I am utterly put out of the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. For while we may in time be tempted to make treaties of peace with those who attack us or their descendants, Jehovah will not. Notice this as well. In the narrative of the Torah, it doesn't say the conclusion of the battle with Amalek, that there was a single casualty or a single injury amongst his people. So even when it looks like he hasn't done a big miraculous part of the sea and all that, and he leads them to have a little fight, actually, he is ever with us. He is always with us, even when we don't think that he is. Moses built an altar and he called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. What he said, behold, because Jehovah had sworn that Jehovah will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. I'm just going to finish with a couple of lessons from this parsha we get. He is not nearly as concerned with our comfort and our convenience as he is with our purpose and destiny and calling in life. Now, he wanted that. He wants us to grumble. Why? Because he wants us to get it out of our system as early as possible. He sends things in our lives to bring to the surface that which needs to be dealt with. And it is remarkable, isn't it? You can, I've said it before, you can think you're doing really well, and then something comes along, and then you realise, hang on a minute, what this needs dealing with. Because he's got a bigger and better plan for us than we can even imagine. So every time something comes up, and it's a trial and it's a situation, I think Jim Staley did a teaching, he said actually every trial is like an interview for a promotion, because he wants to elevate you and put you in a higher place. So what you should always remember is these trials and tests are set by him. He's in charge of everything, and even when you think you're on your own, you're not. So what are we doing? We're grumbling in response to what he's doing to detoxify us. He's training us, he's purifying us through tests and trials. We have to learn to live by his voice, not our own appetites, and we have to live by his decree, not our opinions. And we have to learn what it means to be a bride of the Most High God instead of a slave of the Pharaoh. And that's quite a big transition, isn't it? So shall we pray?